I'm showing a start to finish of making sourdough just to help everybody out. So I zero out my scale and then I put my bowl on, and I liked using these stoneware bowls. It's just something I have, but set it to 0 and then you're gonna start. This is my recipe that I use. It gets 200 grams of active bubbling starter. So once you get to that, I just zeroed it out and then I add in my water. This gets 650 grams of filtered water. So I always remove it off my scale and I whisk it in with my dough whisk, and then I will put it back on the scale, make sure it's zeroed out again, and I add my salt, which is 20 grams of salt, and I use pink Himalayan salt. That's just my preference. And then 950 grams of organic bread flour. So in goes the flour. I only use this measuring cup because I get it out of my jar this way, but I'm not actually doing a measuring cup measurement. I am just trying to get the scale to be on the exact number. Sometimes a few ounces one way or the other isn't a big deal. But now we just get this all wet. So I love this Danish whisk because it just does such a great job of incorporating all of the dry ingredients in with the wet ingredients. So we're mixing this around just to the point of having everything incorporated and creating a shaggy dough. So I just want you to see what that looks like. If I handle it a little bit, you see it's together, but it's not like a dough ball. This is considered a shaggy dough. And this is where we're going to let it sit for an hour, covered with a damp cloth. I've put things back here on my stove. This seems to be my best spot. Okay, I usually do 4 stretch and folds. This is the final one. I don't know, I lost my footage for the other 3, but basically it goes from that shaggy texture to a dough texture. And when I get to this point, I do 4 stretch and folds, 30 minutes apart, and I just set my timer. When I can pull the whole ball of dough out of my bowl like that, I know it is ready to do its first long ferment. So I cover it with plastic, and I'm going to set this back on the stove. Right now in my house, the temperature is in the upper 60s. So you see it's getting some bubbles, but there's no jiggle yet. Here we are. It's been fermenting on, isn't that nice jiggle? I know it's ready. It's been fermenting for almost 10, 11 hours. And it is ready. So I use rice flour. This is brown rice flour to lightly dust my surface with. My husband helps me usually pull this out because these stoneware crock bowls are really, really heavy. So I just sort of try to let it fall out. I scrape a little bit to loosen it up, but I try to just sort of let it fall out on its own. And why do I use the brown rice flour? Well, because it doesn't add more gluten to the bread like an all-purpose flour would. So I find it works really well to eliminate some of that stickiness. So I'm dividing it into 2 loaves, plop one up out of the way, and then I'm going to work on the first one. This is that process called laminating. So you're just sort of smushing it out. And I just sort of gently tug at it. Try to make kind of a rectangular shape. I don't want to deflate all the bubbles. I just want to kind of pull it out. And then I fold it into thirds on itself. I roll it up. And then I sort of cup it over and I start creating tension to form a nice bowl. Once I feel like it's nice and formed, I'm going to dust my banneton a little bit and then plop it upside down in there. And then I kind of seal up the bottom so there's no gaps. And then I throw a little extra rice flour on there before I cover it because I don't want it to stick up into that plastic. So now this is going to set aside. Here's the other one. I'm making a batard shape. That's the long loaf with this one. I still kind of do the same basic method, but I'm not going to do that crunch over sideways fold this time around. I'm just going to tuck those edges under and shape it. Throw a little bit of rice flour on there, a little more inside the banneton, upside down, and just pinch it around so I don't have any big gaping seams. You know, I'm not selling these. These are from my family for our personal enjoyment. They're not always perfect, but they sure taste really good. Got these little coverings. I think it was a pack of 200 for like $5 on Amazon. I let them sit out for an hour on the stove, just at room temperature, and then I put them in the fridge overnight. So in the morning, I make sure my racks are organized the way I want them in my oven. I found that putting that tray on the bottom works best for me. And then I put in my 2 Dutch ovens and I let them preheat. So this is super speed. This is going to be the dusting with some flour. You don't have to do that. You could use different kinds. And then the scoring. I use my little my bread lame, and I just, whatever pattern is in my mind. I'm kind of doing like a little plant pattern here today. You do what's right for you. And then I cut that big notch into the hot pan, goes in, and I like to add a couple of ice cubes to create steam. So I drop them in between the parchment and the wall of the pan, and then cover the lid. And then here's for the bowl, same thing, just do a pattern. And just a side note, I don't really personally like those giant ears, big hard ears, and some people love them. I don't really like them, but I do cut the extra slit because you're venting out air. That's the true purpose of it. It just looks cool also. So this one goes in my other Dutch oven, and give you a little upward view of what I do. Just stick it in there like that, and then I put the ice cubes in. Okay, so these heated Dutch ovens go back into the oven, which is at 490 degrees still, and I'm going to cook them like this for 20 minutes. When 20 minutes is up, I'm going to pull them out, pull off the lids, and then I'm going to reduce the heat to 465 degrees for 25 more minutes. This is what works for my oven. You'll have to play with it for your own. And these are really hot, so be careful. When they come out, I put them onto a cooling rack and I slide them off of the parchment paper, and voila, they're beautiful. It smells so amazing in my house right now. And also, loaves aren't always perfect, and I'm going to show you this. This one looks great. I love it. This one, I don't know, it fell kind of on the one side. I might have had a big bubble there, but don't stress. They're perfect. They're light and fluffy, and they're going to be so delicious. I like to cover them to let them